A betrayed woman discovers that her pain was the key to her destiny. Her husband's affair with her best friend destroys her, but hidden in that betrayal lies a $70,000 secret that flips her entire life upside down. From heartbreak to power, from silence to success, this story shows how revenge doesn't always scream. Sometimes it earns. When I first met Ethan, I thought he was my safe place in a world that never stopped spinning. He had that calm voice, that patient smile, the kind of man who could make chaos sound like music. We built everything together, from our tiny apartment with secondhand furniture to a small design studio that carried both our names on the door. Every success felt like a shared heartbeat. Every failure, a lesson we promised to face hand in hand. But sometimes the people closest to you don't stab you in the back, they do it while holding your hand. It began quietly, like all tragedies do. Late nights at the office. Extra coffee cups on his desk. Excuses that sounded too rehearsed, too perfect. I ignored them because love makes you blind in ways even light can't fix. And then one night, while organizing old project files, I found a folder on his laptop. It was named Proposal 3, Private. The moment I clicked it, the room stopped breathing. Dozens of messages, hidden drafts, and voice notes, all between Ethan and my best friend, Claire. The woman who stood beside me on my wedding day, the woman who used to say, "You're the sister I never had." Each message felt like a blade pressed against my skin. Words of affection, promises of secret getaways, even jokes about how naive I was. My hands shook so badly that the mouse fell from my grip. The tears came before I could stop them, heavy and hot, blurring the screen but not the truth. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. I just sat there, in silence, realizing that everything I believed in had been quietly burning for months, and I had been too in love to smell the smoke. The next morning, I packed a small bag and left. No confrontation, no dramatic goodbye. Just a short message. You'll find your freedom easier now. I checked into a cheap hotel on the edge of the city. The kind of place where the wallpaper is tired and no one asks questions. For 3 days, I barely spoke. My phone buzzed constantly, his calls, her messages, apologies written like poetry that meant nothing. On the 4th day, I finally opened my email. Among the chaos, one message stood out. It was from our old lawyer, the one who helped set up our company. The subject line read, "Unclaimed asset, immediate attention." At first, I thought it was spam. But curiosity, that small spark that never dies even in pain, made me open it. Inside was a short note. According to the partnership terms signed 2 years ago, a confidential account under your name holds a pending transfer of $70,000. Funds were deposited by Ethan, marked as a founder's reserve. Please confirm details. I stared at the screen, confused. Ethan had never mentioned any reserve. Why would he hide that? For a moment, anger twisted with disbelief. I logged into the attached portal, and there it was. My name, my signature, my account. $70,000, waiting quietly in digital silence. It felt unreal. Betrayal had shattered my world, yet here was a door I didn't even know existed, opened by the same man who destroyed everything else. That night, I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, thinking, this money wasn't just a number. It was a message from fate. Maybe not from him, but from life itself, a reminder that even in betrayal, sometimes the universe hides a seed of rebirth. I decided to withdraw it, every single cent. Not for revenge, not for survival, but to rebuild something that was truly mine. The next morning, I walked to the bank with trembling hands. As the teller processed the transaction, I watched the numbers appear on the screen, one by one. 70,000. A fortune born from heartbreak. I rented a small studio apartment, painted the walls white, and bought the cheapest furniture I could find. It wasn't much, but it was quiet, and it was mine. For the first time in months, I felt air in my lungs again. I spent the next week researching. Every late night I had spent crying became a night of planning. I remembered how Claire and I used to talk about starting a boutique brand, designs for women who wanted elegance without compromise. She took that dream and turned it into betrayal. I decided to take it back and turn it into legacy. I called it 70. Just one word, simple and bold, because that number had rewritten my life. With that money, I built a small online store, hired a young graphic designer, and started selling minimal jewelry under the brand name. I didn't advertise through friends or social media circles. I built quietly, patiently. The same patience that once blinded me now became my weapon. Weeks turned into months. Orders trickled in, then multiplied. One influencer wore a piece, then another. Within 6 months, 70 was trending in the local market, a symbol of resilience and understated power. And then one morning, I received a message from an unknown number. "Your brand is everywhere," it said. Ethan saw it too. I stared at the screen, and for the first time, I smiled, not with bitterness, but with calm satisfaction. Because the man who betrayed me was now scrolling through ads funded by the very money he once hid from me. I didn't need revenge. I didn't need closure. My life had already delivered both, wrapped in a $70,000 secret that turned my pain into power. They thought they buried me under shame, but all they did was plant me, and I grew back in gold. Success has a strange silence to it. It doesn't always roar. Sometimes, it whispers through the hum of late-night emails and the soft buzz of an order notification on your phone. That was my life now, quiet victories, one after another. The kind of silence that doesn't ache anymore. A year had passed since Ethan and Claire disappeared from my life. I didn't follow them on social media. I didn't ask mutual friends for updates. It was like they had moved to another planet, and maybe they had because I was living on one of my own making. 70 was no longer a small online boutique. It had grown into a recognized name, with a waiting list of clients who wanted custom designs. I had just opened my first studio space in the city's art district, a bright room with tall windows and a single rule written on the wall: pain creates power. Every morning, I'd walk into that studio with a cup of coffee and look around. The air smelled of fresh paint and ambition. I'd run my fingers over the jewelry displays, gold, silver, and rose-tinted metals catching the sunlight, and I'd think, this is what rebirth looks like. But the universe has a peculiar way of circling back, doesn't it? Just when you think you've turned every page, life drops an old letter between the lines. It happened on a Tuesday. My assistant, Mara, walked into my office holding an envelope. "It's from an investor," she said, her voice casual, but the name looked familiar. I opened it, and there it was. Ethan Reynolds. My chest tightened, not from love or anger, but from the weight of a name I had buried long ago. Inside was a formal letter. He wrote that he'd seen 70 in an article about self-made female founders and wanted to explore potential collaboration opportunities. I laughed. Not a loud laugh, the kind that slips out when irony feels too perfect to ignore. He didn't know, or maybe he didn't care, that the brand he wanted to invest in was built from the ashes he left behind. For 2 days, I didn't respond. Then curiosity, that old friend, knocked again. Maybe this was life's final act, the moment where every secret would come full circle. So I said yes. We arranged to meet at a luxury cafe downtown. When I arrived, the air was filled with the scent of roasted coffee and quiet regret. He was already there, sitting by the window, his suit a little too expensive, his smile a little too practiced. "Anna," he said, standing up almost breathless. "You look different." "I should," I replied, sitting down. "I rebuilt myself from the ground up." He laughed softly, trying to find the old rhythm between us, the one that no longer existed. "I've been following your journey," he said. 70 is incredible. I had no idea you had it in you. I looked him straight in the eyes. "You did, Ethan. You just never wanted me to know I did." For a moment, silence filled the space between us. He shifted in his seat, trying to reclaim his usual confidence. "Listen," he began. "I made mistakes. Big ones. I lost everything. Claire and we didn't work out. She left. The company fell apart after you walked away. I've been trying to rebuild, but it's been rough." There it was, not an apology, but a confession wrapped in failure. I didn't smile. I didn't pity him either. So, what do you want from me? He leaned forward, lowering his voice like he was offering a secret. I have a proposal. I can invest in 70. You've built something special, and I want to be part of it. Maybe we can start over, professionally. For a second, I just looked at him. The man who had once shattered me was now sitting across the table, asking for a piece of the empire I built from that very shattering. I wanted to tell him no, to walk away with a perfect exit line. But something in me whispered, not yet. So I smiled politely. Send me the proposal, I said. I'll review it. He seemed relieved. He thought he still had a chance to control the narrative. But this time, I was the one writing it. That night, I sat in my studio and stared at the proposal he'd emailed. He offered to invest $100,000 for a partnership stake, a generous offer, maybe even desperate. I could have ignored it, but I realized something. This wasn't about money. It was about finishing a story the right way. So I invited him to the studio the following week for a formal presentation. When he arrived, he looked around, speechless. The walls glowed with gold accents, and our signature, "Pain creates power," statement hung behind me. Mara served coffee and left the room. "This place is beautiful," he said softly. "I'm proud of you, Anna." "I'm proud of me too," I replied. "Now, let's talk business." I walked him through the numbers, the projections, the global expansion plans. He nodded, impressed. Then, at the end, I turned the final page of the presentation, and there it was, printed in bold letters. Investor status, declined. He looked confused. Wait, what? I leaned forward. Ethan, you once told me that love and business don't mix. Maybe you were right, because this, I gestured around the room, was built from the love you broke, not the love you offered. He sat back, speechless. This company doesn't need you, I continued calmly. But you needed to see what you created. Unintentionally. You gave me $70,000 once, remember? That was the foundation. So, in a way, you already invested. You just didn't realize it until today. He blinked, his eyes softening, the weight of regret sinking in. I never meant to hurt you, he whispered. I know, I said. But you did. And now, you get to live with the reminder that your betrayal built something greater than both of us. He stood up slowly, his hands trembling. I guess this is goodbye then. It's closure, I corrected. The kind that money can't buy. As he left, I felt an odd calmness settle over me. Not triumph, just peace. The kind that comes when you finally stop bleeding from old wounds and realize they've already turned into scars. That night, I stood by the studio window and looked at the city lights. Every flicker reminded me of the choices that shaped me, the pain, the loss, the courage to start again. I realized I no longer needed revenge or validation. I had something better, control. In the world outside, Ethan would keep chasing redemption. Claire would keep running from guilt. But me? I'd keep building. Quietly, gracefully, powerfully. Because in the end, success doesn't always scream your story. Sometimes, it just lets the people who betrayed you hear the echo. And mine was echoing everywhere.